So I was unjustly terminated. Yes, I was unjustly terminated April 29th. We're in the grievance process with the union for the wrongful termination. So the attorneys are dealing with, us and the attorneys are dealing with that. But because it's civil, it takes a while. So I know that in the end, the truth will come out and it'll be fine. In the investigation, the original complaint that came in was not sustained, was unfounded. But during the investigation, they alleged that I omitted material information and I wasn't truthful during the investigation. During the first interview that I had, and that I wasn't truthful in that first interview, but in the second interview, I told them everything. One of the big issues with their theory and their decision, or the thing that they left out, was definitions. So during the first interview, I had explained to the investigator that there is a difference between the federal drug task force that I supervise and the JNET state side that I also supervise. So the JNET side falls under the authority, and all the investigations under the authority of the Centralia Police Department. The federal investigation and the federal cases fall under the authority of the Drug Enforcement Administration. And so in the first interview, the investigator was asking me solely questions regarding JNET, which is the state side cases. So I answered questions based on his questions on JNET. Then in the second interview, the investigator changed the definition of JNET. So instead of the first one, it was clearly, I explained, you've got the federal task force and you have JNET. In the second interview at the start, the investigator said that when I say JNET, I mean anybody working in the JNET office, regardless of federal or state. So now, instead of the two separations between JNET and the feds, he combined it into one as JNET. So I knew that they were going to ask me questions about federal investigations that I don't have the authority to talk about. So I had the investigator go get the chief of police. I explained my concerns about releasing and talking about DEA sensitive case information, that it's a violation of DEA policy if I don't have authorization to release this, and it could also be a violation of federal law. The chief told me, nope, answer every question. So, all right, since I wasn't allowed to talk to the DEA, the chief, Andy Caldwell, was the intermediator between the DEA and me. I had assumed and thought that he had expressed my concerns to the DEA about releasing DEA sensitive information. But he told me to go ahead and do that, so I assumed that everything was good. Now that we've got clarification and he changed the definition from JNET to include the federal stuff. So when you look at the statements, he'd ask me one question here in JNET, and I say no. The same question in the next interview, same question, JNET, and I say yes. That's because the definition of JNET changed. JNET was just Centralia information the first interview. In the second interview, it included the federal information, federal investigations. But there was no explanation anywhere in the investigator's findings or Andy Caldwell's findings of that distinction. But that's a huge distinction because it goes to why there was a difference in my answer, but it was the same question. It's because the definition changed. I answered truthfully the first time, I answered truthfully the second time. They just changed the definition.
I've seen it happen before on election times with
So I never thought, going through this, I didn't think anything of it. Why would I think that people would be that way? That because we should be honorable. We should have integrity. Like, I never thought that this would happen, that it was going to be an issue. But of course, hindsight. So after that interview, I was put on paid administrative leave that was non-disciplinary for 5 weeks. And during those 5 weeks, I was, I call it house arrest. I was told in my administrative leave letter, I was to be available at my residence from 7 in the morning to 5 in the afternoon, Monday through Thursday. So that's why I call it house arrest. I was supposed to be home. So during that time, yeah, I had a lot of time to think and process, wondering why is this happening? Why is this happening? This doesn't make any sense. I didn't do anything wrong. And, once the investigation was over, they gave us some of the investigative stuff, and I listened to my statement again, and I'm like, no, I answered the questions as he asked. He specifically said, Janet, your understanding, and that he asked me, so your understanding is that this is related to what happened in 2022, that you already reported to Andy Caldwell, and this stuff, the stuff that he reported to the FBI and the complaint that he made. And I'm like, yes, that's my understanding. So in the second interview, they bring all this other stuff in that they didn't bring in the first one. They bring in documents that were part of a DEA case that a commander from Centralia went into my office and took pictures of and introduced it. Some of a federal case. So that's what expanded the questioning on the second one, and what brought in DEA stuff. So, yeah, it just, but going through and trying to process the why, with 35 years of no disciplinary action, of honorable service, no integrity question, no integrity issues, no honesty issues, commendations of my honesty and integrity. It just didn't make sense. Like, why don't they believe me? Why aren't they not giving me the benefit of the doubt? Like, I didn't, there was no intentional intent to do anything wrong. It's always about what was doing right, not providing information that's not substantiated. People make complaints, and we get complaints from people. So this federal case, somebody submitted a complaint to the DEA, not anonymously. I mean, they put their name and contact information, submitted a complaint of possible drug activity, named a couple people, and so that started the investigation. It's just all about associates and links and people who know people, and well, shoot, we might be able to talk to this person that can get us information. So I mean, all of this stuff that started out, somebody called in a complaint, and none of that should have been public. None of that should have been released because it's still an investigation. We don't know if it's true. We don't know if it's not true because it's in an investigation.
How did it get released?
City of Centralia. So I was terminated July 29th.
No.
April 29th. April 30th, the Centralia Police Department. So I had received notice, I think the same day I was terminated, I was given a third-party notification that I had until May 8th to seek an injunction from the courts if I didn't want anything, my information and stuff released about this investigation. But the next day, on April 30th, the Centralia Police Department started releasing information, and some of it was unredacted.
Shayla's?
City of Centralia, sorry.
Oh.
Yeah. City of Centralia started releasing the investigation and releasing stuff. So, I wasn't the only one that got third-party notifications. Every person that was mentioned associated with that complaint in those documents were also notified of a third-party notification that there's information relating to them. Yeah. So, and information from the investigation of the case was also released to those people. So, why they released that? None of that information should have been released. It's not confirmed, and it's not, when we start an investigation and somebody makes a complaint, that doesn't become public, because some people lie and make stuff up.
No.
So we have to find evidence to support that. If we don't find evidence to support it, in our investigation, we've exhausted everything about our investigation and there's no evidence to support the allegation, it's never public. It's not something that people get to know. It's never public. If it is true and we establish probable cause and there's evidence, then people get arrested and then it becomes public. But during an investigation, when an investigation is going on, to release that information out in the public is wrong.
Yeah.
It is defamatory. So yeah, the city of Centralia should have never done that. So.
And it's not against any laws.
Huh?
It's not against any laws.
So if it interferes with a federal investigation and the federal government wants to charge whoever released that information with obstructing a federal investigation, it could be. Civilly, if somebody wants to sue the city of Centralia for releasing their information, then, of course, we the people are going to pay for that, for those decisions that were made. So, but yeah, it was wrong. Should never have happened. So,
are you able to have your union rep there when they're talking?
yes.
I think he goofed up right there.
Well, no, that was the benefit of having my union rep with me, because he's a witness to what happened.
Okay, he was there.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah, that's why
Yeah.
right now, if you walked up to me and says, I got this, I got that on you,
Yeah.
I don't know nothing.
No. My union rep. So in an administrative investigation, the union rep's there to make sure that documents any unfair labor practices, if there's clarification that needs to happen that we're not sure, but they can't interfere. At the end of the day, if the department says you will answer this question, even if it's outside the scope of the complaint, you still have to. It becomes after everything's done. So let's say the city of Centralia exonerated me and there was no discipline. Well, everything that they did wrong in the investigation, we don't have a grievance for on the union side. But because there was discipline, now everything that they did wrong in the investigation, all the many issues with it, is part of the grievance case and the wrongful termination. So now it's the union. So not only was the union, my union rep with me in my interviews and has been with me all along the way, he was also there during the interviews of two of the other officers, detectives that were interviewed that are part of our bargaining unit as well. So he was there and he has more information on the discrepancies.
Does he know what's going on though?
100%. So before I went over for my final disciplinary hearing on the 29th, the union had asked me, my rep asked me, well, they may give you the opportunity to resign or retire in lieu of termination. And I told him, I said, that'll never happen. I didn't do anything wrong. And he said, good. So when we went in, they did. They offered me, Andy Caldwell offered me the opportunity to resign or retire in lieu of, before he gave discipline. And I didn't before I had the chance to respond, my union rep says no. So yeah, the union actually has been very good in this process. They've been doing a lot of work for me. So I have nothing negative to say. And now the union attorneys are involved. So, but it's that process.
It takes a long time.
It does. It takes a bit. Hey, but I know the truth is going to come out in the end. If it wasn't for the Thurston County Superior Court judge that made a ruling on the new sheriff's law and found it unconstitutional and put an injunction on it, I wouldn't be able to run. So April 29th, while I was being terminated, so by being terminated, that would be the only way to get my commission from the Criminal Justice Training Commission put on a suspended status before the end of the week. Now, the following Monday is filing week. You only have 1 week to file. So with my commission being put on suspended status, under the new sheriff's law, I would not be eligible to file to run. But what I didn't know, and what they didn't know, was that as I was being fired, the Thurston County Superior Court judge ruled that that law was unconstitutional and put an injunction on it, so it's not in effect. So when I left City Hall and I got in the car with my wife when she was waiting, I was like, well, I'm not going to be able to run. And she was like, well, did you see what Thurston County Superior Court judge just ruled? So that ruling is what allowed me to be able to run, and what allows you, the people, to be able to choose your sheriff. Yeah. So, yeah, and it's, so when you look at it, it all seems very political. A political intent to keep me from being able to run for sheriff. Yeah. So, and then what's interesting is the following Tuesday, the Washington State Supreme Court upheld that injunction. So yeah. So smart. It was good. And maybe that's why the following day they started releasing stuff to try to smear my name, to get public opinion turned against me. That's why they violated that condition. Yeah.
So, when it does get cleared up and everything's good, does Jonathan Myers have to take you off the Brady list?
Yeah, he will have to, because
How can he put you on it?
Exactly.
Well, number one, we all know the question, how can you get fired over a unanimous thing, but how can Jonathan Myers put you on the Brady list when everything's under investigation?
So I think that when you look at what due process is, I think that that's where the failure is. I think that the prosecutor should have refrained. I mean, obviously I'm not in law enforcement anymore. So because I'm grieving and contesting the termination and contesting what happened, that he should have waited for due process to happen. Instead, he didn't. And that does put, the county in a,
Bad place.
a potentially bad place. Because, it is defamation if what happened in the investigation is not true and there was lies and omissions in there. It's fruits of the poisonous tree. Like, it all becomes bad. And so by Jonathan Meyer doing what Jonathan Meyer did, yes, could that expose the county to some liability? Yeah, I mean, it possibly could. I mean, I'm not a lawyer, but
some things came after the fact, after all of this had gone down. One of the claims is that you told Allie Picard, is that her name? She claims that you told her that Snaza was doing drugs.
Yeah, none of that is true. Matter of fact, the first actual conversation I had with Allie Picard was in February of this year, where she called and she had concerns about something that happened with her child at school. And she just needed some advice, and I just directed her that she should report that to the police and let the police investigate it. So any conversation that she has that's saying that I'm talking about anything that has to do with an investigation or a belief or Sheriff Snaza is false, and it's not true. Insinuating, and there's been insinuations that because of conversations that my wife has had, that somehow I'm responsible for that, or that information has come from me. Well, that's not true. None of that is true. So and the fact that they're investigating after the investigation is done is an issue. Because if you're trying to bolster your case, obviously you know that your case is weak. So, and then to bring in more people that are saying, you know, bringing up false information and making false allegations, it actually opens up more people to liability, especially if you're a public official and you're an elected official. Not only is it you know, bringing yourself in that you're making false allegations, but it also is who you're representing, whether it's the Port of Chehalis or Port of Centralia, you know. So you have these other issues, you know, and it becomes defamation. So, and in law enforcement should understand that we don't talk about things that, you know, I mean, if somebody's involved in an investigation, we don't talk about that information to anyone, even our spouses. That's a violation of policy, and it can interfere with the investigation. There's things that you don't share. Fortunately for me, you know, I was in law enforcement for a decade before I got married. So I've never been used to talking to my wife about things that I do at work, you know, or things that, because it's, you know, work's work. Fortunately, she was a state trooper, and so she never asked about things. She knows that my work is my work, and, you know, she might ask how my day is, but talking about cases doesn't happen. So,
If you lose this or have anything, can you get another job as a police officer somewhere?
well, my plan was always to retire next year, next May. I would have had 32 years on in law enforcement. I'll be 53 and I can retire and draw. So, you know, obviously if I don't get elected, I'm still dealing with the wrongful termination and a defamation case. I know that everything will be made whole when I'm done and be made right. But I'm actually hoping that the citizens of Lewis County realize what they need is a sheriff that's going to lead and a sheriff that's going to stand up and fight for them for the wrongs that are going on. And I think that actions speak louder than words. And I can tell you that I know the wrong that's been done to me, and I know that this is hard on me and hard on my family, but we are not backing down. We are not stopping, because there's a right and a wrong. If good people do nothing, evil will prevail. And that's not acceptable to me. So I'm staying in the fight here for my job and for my reputation. And if elected as sheriff, I'm going to stay in the fight for your rights and your safety. So. Does that answer that?
Yes.
Okay. All right.
How long do you think your investigation will go?
So the arbitration, now it's about picking, the city and the union will pick an arbitrator from the state arbitration pool. Then we have to schedule a hearing, and it all depends on when the arbitrator can schedule it. Some of these can take a year.
Yeah.
Some can take 2 years. You know, hopefully we can get it done sooner than later. I would love to be vindicated sooner than later.
Yeah.
So, but at the end of the day, God has a timeline.
Yep.
He's got a plan. You know, I just need to stay in His will and just keep on moving forward. So I'm not going to let this stuff interfere and worry me. I know I haven't done anything wrong. There's nothing that I'm embarrassed about. That I've done nothing. So I've been honorable in everything that I've done. I've been truthful in everything that I've done. So, and I know that the truth will come out. So.
What happens if the truth does come out? That means you can go after the ones that wrongfully accuse you?
Yeah, and that's where the attorneys get to deal with, you know, with that side. Because, yeah, they're, you know, and you look at it, people should be held accountable for what they've done. And if they knowingly and intentionally did something wrong, then there should be consequences for them. Now, if it was a mistake, if it was an honest error, or, you know, lack of knowledge, lack of experience, okay, you know, that's, I get that, because nobody's perfect. But if it's intentional, you know, people need to be held accountable. I don't harbor ill will to anybody that's involved in this. Like, hate is, you know, it rots us. So why hold on to that? Why people do what they do? I can't control that. I can control me. And so, you know, being angry, being mad, being upset, listen, life's too short to get worked up over that. This is where I am. This is the cross that I'm bearing right now. And I need to do this with integrity, honorably, and pleasing the Lord in what I do and what I say. So,
what I appreciate also is how you never once got into the whole drama. You've always just minded your business. You've kept it because it's still under investigation. You're respecting the process. So you don't go in with the drama. You don't engage with the drama. You've stayed away from all of that. And I think that's good to expect from a sheriff. You're kind of showing us that this is how you're going to operate as sheriff. You're going to wait to go in with the facts and not get dirty.
Right. Well, and it's about being professional. It's about, if you say you're a leader and you're going to lead by example, is what kind of example do you want to be? This is the example we should be. You know, we should be professional. We should wait until everything is in before we make judgments. You know, I mean, that's the expectation. You know, we're not the judge, jury, and executioner. You know, we're out there investigating. That's like, you know, if somebody calls in and makes a complaint, we don't rush to judgment. It doesn't mean we treat somebody any differently. You know, we need to be professional. You know, how we carry ourselves, how we conduct ourselves, everybody is watching. You know, you can't handle the pressure. Are you really a leader? So, man, it's warm.
It is warm.
Left the door open.
And I wore my light hat. So, anyway.
So are you gonna be able to retire?
Yeah.
You got 32 years, right?
Well, yeah. So right now I've got 31. So I would have had 31. I can retire right now and draw, but I take a penalty. I can retire next year in May with no penalty. So, but you know, the way it's going, I'm not even thinking about retirement. I'm thinking about being sheriff and making this a safe place for all of us. You know, this is a great county. We need to focus on making Lewis County great again. So